Namaste, blessings all. So happy to see all your faces here live and so grateful for also all of you participating in the recording. Welcome to this workshop. Today we're going to dive into really our topic in this group covers Ayurvedic psychology, trauma healing, and today we're specifically going to dive into inner parts work and Ayurveda. So most of you read some of the email about this topic and kind of talking about inner conflict and how that relates to our health and well-being. And so we're going to dive into some of the intersection of that the energetics of emotions, and more specifically, how these different voices inside of our head that are constantly guiding us and directing us or injecting positive thoughts or fearful thoughts, but they may have conflicting opinions about things, right? And then we know what that does to our health. It throws off our digestion, our gut, our sleep. Just that feeling of indecisiveness can create so much anxiety and overwhelm and stress. And obviously, that impacts our physiology. And I honestly just had a really crazy experience with this. Just so I've been traveling, I've been moving into a new home, which is why we haven't met for these workshops in a while. I just moved halfway across the state into the rural, very rural countryside, which is so good for my nervous system. And we have land here now, so we can start farming and gardening. But with that comes some of the new challenges of finding internet that works well and things like that. So it's been a lot of movement. And then I was supposed to go travel to see my family, and I had experienced also some inner voices and inner conflict coming up, like around the timing of it and just how much movement I've had in my life leading up till this moment. And also, I did a big cleanse. And so it was a lot of change. And when there's a lot of change, how there's some part of you that just feels like, oh, I just want to rejuvenate and be. And then there's other parts of you that are like, wait, I need to keep going and I need to move forward on this goal or this agenda that I've had, right? And then there might be other parts too. But I definitely had that going on and was like, okay, but no, I committed to this and I decided and I need to stick through with it, right? How many of us have that part? That's like the really that really serves us in ways of like being loyal friends and solid workers and being consistent and all that. But sometimes it can be create stubbornness and like push through no matter what. And so we have to learn how to balance these different voices. So anyway, so with me, I had all this movement and change over the last couple of months. And then here I was supposed to fly across the country. And I was like all on board. I'm very excited to see my family. I love them very much. But what happened? I got this like tooth infection, and it like flared up just a couple of days before I was supposed to get on the plane. And I was like, clearly I had inner conflict. I was agonizing over like, oh my gosh, can I clear up the infection before I go so that I have a good time? Because I don't want to feel, terrible physically and have all this pain. And I couldn't sleep at night because of the pain. And so I was like, I started scrambling, and there was this one part of me that was like, you better fix this quick so you can follow through with your decision, right? With this like external flag you had planted, like you need to follow through. And then, but at the end of the day, I ended up realizing, all these voices, I was agonizing, pain, not sleeping. What do I do? What do I do? How can I accommodate? And I started this other part starts daydreaming about how can I control my environment and circumstances so that I'm comfortable. How many of you notice that voice that comes in when you're under stress? You start thinking, how can I accommodate this? And then so we're going to decipher and distinguish all these different parts. So for me, what happened the day before I was supposed to leave, here I am packing my bag, like have all my stuff packed. I'm like, I'm still going. This thing is still throbbing in my mouth. And then finally, I got words of wisdom from my Ayurvedic mentor. And he like tuned in with me for a minute. He called me, like, I couldn't get in touch with him. I was trying to call him, trying to call him. I was like, what do I do? What do I do? How many of us, when we have all that inner conflict, desperately try to reach to some sane, reflection outside of us to just make the decision for me, right? Um, and so, yeah, I see all of you like laughing through the process. It was just funny, right at finally at the right moment. And he's like, yeah, the infection will probably get worse and start spreading as soon as you go up in altitude. And he's like, but you can really do whatever you want because you'll be fine, really, no matter what. But just something to consider. So I was like, as soon as I heard that, I was like, okay, thank you for empowering me to make my own decision. Because he definitely was not going to be like, I'm going to make your decision for you. But he was just like, he laid it out with a clear reflection as someone who wasn't just an inner voice chattering away. And so with that bit of information, it gave the part of me that was like, no, listen to me. It's not the right time. You've been moving so much. You need to just be. And I felt relief instantly. And I, called up my family. I'm like, you know what? I'm so sorry, but I can't, we need to just postpone. Luckily, the airlines let you do that right now. But I was just like, I just need to postpone. I need to just be. And so as soon as I had relief from the inner conflict, the tooth infection went away like 3 days later. And I had already cleared my schedule to go see my family. So now here I was in my new home without a ton of things that I had to do. And I actually got to just land here and be with the land and heal. And it had brought so many gifts with it. So I felt like, so I had a very firsthand visceral experience of the inner parts and the conflict. This has honestly been a lot of the work that I've done. I've been practicing Ayurveda now for about 11 years, but in the last 8 years, I've been noticing with clients just how much their physical body reacts to these inner voices. And I realized that I could only help someone so much with their physical health without addressing the mind and the emotions, because our thought patterns have such a stronghold on how our body responds physically. And if we are suppressing different voices inside of us, the ones that have needs or ones that have been exiled or suppressed for many many years, those parts of you haven't been acknowledged, witnessed, heard, felt for many many years. And the only thing they can do is pull the strings of your physiology to try to get your attention. And so sometimes what happens when we have like chronic pains or illnesses or just recurring patterns in our health that aren't supportive for us, things of that nature, or even illnesses that all of the doctors and medical tests can't find any reason for, or we become accident prone, like we're always, tripping ourselves up and, sometimes somehow hurting ourselves. Um, there's other aspects of us like hidden deep within our inner world, or I sometimes call our inner kingdom. And those parts are just trying to get our attention. It's not that dis-ease or pain is a bad thing that means you're broken and needs to be fixed. Sometimes it's just some part of you trying to get your attention. So what would your life be like if you didn't have all of these unknown parts that are just ruling you from behind the scenes, but you could allow everybody to come to the table and share in a way that's more cohesive? that actually just creates a lot of cohesiveness in the system. So today I want to explore these topics, and we'll go through some of the Ayurvedic models of what this means, what this looks like, and then the intersection of these kind of parts work with the Ayurvedic health approach. But before we get more into the heady things, I kind of just wanted to open up with this like kind of just vulnerable, silly story of my recent experience, not silly story, but just like this is what we have, what happens. We can all relate to this experience. Now let's dive deeper and start to unlock it, for yourself uniquely. So we will go into some concepts educationally right now, so you'll probably want to take some notes on that, and then we'll do an exercise, a journaling exercise, so that you can start to acquaint yourself or open up to these different parts for yourself. But before we do those two pieces, we'll drop into a moment of meditation and just centering. And I like to always try to mostly begin and end our sessions together with that, because anytime you're working with various parts of you, you want to be able to sit in the seat of your self, capital S self, your true self. And from that place, you can witness the voices instead of getting immediately entangled in what they're saying and believe that you are them. Because then you get this like pulled in every direction. And that's where more anxiety, stress, and conflict comes from. So when we can have this relationship with our parts where we say, okay, you're here, I acknowledge you, all of you are welcome here. But first, we're going to establish sitting in the seat of self, because this is the most productive. Because the true self is not a part. The true self is your true eternal nature that some call soul or spirit. But this is the part of you that transcends all of these um, lower functions of the mind and the body and emotions. And we can get into all that philosophy another day. But I think all of you at this point can, at the very least, right, relate to that. There's some part of me when I feel centered, when I feel calm, when I feel like I'm in my knowing, um, I feel connected to true self. Hi, Arsha. Nice to have you here. And Sherry, thanks for joining in too. Hi. So let's just take a moment, and I want to read a quick meditation poem. We'll do a moment of breathing and a little mantra repetition, and then I'll read the poem. We'll have a little space of silence, and then we'll go more into the educational piece so that you're learning from a clear and open mind. So if you feel comfortable, you can close your eyes for a moment and take a couple full deep breaths, really breathing into the belly and letting it flush out. Just a couple big sighs of relief. Deep breath, relaxing the belly, expanding the belly in all directions. And letting it out. And if it feels good to connect your hands to your heart or into a prayer position, just bowing to all of the love and wisdom that guides us, to all of the teachers and mentors and guides along our journeys that have helped support us to get to this place that we sit right now with one another. And still breathing deep and relaxed. And we'll chant Hari Om 3 times, which there's many different translations for this, but one very simple one is that it gets the energy circulating in your body, helps you connect to true self. connect to your creator and the fabric of your existence. So take one big inhale and exhale. Full deep inhale and exhale with Hari Om. Hari Om. Hari Om. Hari Om. There is a space in the heart where everything meets. Come here if you want to find me. Mind, senses, soul, eternity, all are here. Are you here? Enter the bowl of vastness that is the heart. Listen to the song that is always resonating. Give yourself to it with total abandon. Quiet ecstasy is here, and a steady, regal sense of resting in a perfect spot. You who are the embodiment of blessing, once you know the way, the nature of attention will call you to return. Again and again, answer that call and be saturated with knowing, I belong here. I am at home. Every part of you simply wants to find their way home. Even the parts of you that have voices that sound mean or self-deprecating, they're all just trying to find their way home. Our health of our physical body, the well-being of our emotional body, follow suit of our thoughts, but more so than just the thoughts, it's the relationship that you have with the sources of those thoughts. It's all about relationship. The body and emotions follow suit to the parts of you, the way that they express and the way that you relate to how they express. Meaning, if you relate to these parts of you, especially the ones that are sad, angry, upset, having a hard time, putting you and others down, those are parts that are very easy to get frustrated with, or to be like, I don't like that part of me. I want that part of me to go away. But the way that you relate to a part of you that you want it to go away instantly creates dissonance in your system, because the way that you relate to every part of you is what directs your physiology, it's what directs your emotionality, it's what directs all your physical functions, it's what directs your decision making and how you feel on a day-to-day basis. It's what directs your interactions with the people around you, those you love and serve. It's what directs everything. So if you can't relate to the parts of you in a supportive way, it's very hard to relate to the world around you in a supportive way. And then the world around you seems to be a very hostile place because the inner world has become a very hostile place. And so if there is at any point in your life where you were hurt, had a wound from childhood or any kind of trauma, there's a part of you that's split away from itself and got buried. And there are other parts that have made it their mission to protect that vulnerable part from ever getting hurt again. So new parts of you become developed or have to switch their roles in order to become protective and to try to keep that part of you, quote unquote, safe. This becomes a big burden on these protector parts because these protector parts have gifts and are actually adding to the ecosystem of your whole. So inside each one of us is a whole kingdom, an inner kingdom of beings, known and unknown to you, that are all just trying to get along. They're all just trying to move this kingdom in the right direction, move this inner world in a productive way through your life. And so everything in Ayurveda is microcosm to macrocosm. So peace on earth, or harmony in your community, or harmony in your family unit, all begins with you cultivating and understanding, meeting and knowing, witnessing, feeling, listening to, relating in a healthy way to all of these inner parts within you, and to eventually retrieve the parts of you that have been fragmented in your psyche because of hurt, pain, trauma from the past, or even present circumstances. So there's a complex, not complicated, but just simply complex layering of interactions that happens throughout our lives, throughout the different ways that we cope with being a human in this world and relating to all the different dynamics of love and or lack thereof from our caretakers and the people that are supposed to protect and love us, or the groups of people in society that are supposed to protect and provide for us in different ways. And so there are three kind of um, there are a few different main categories of ways we can look at this. There's kind of three main categories of inner energetic dynamics, and we've spoken to this in depth throughout some of the earlier workshops. I'll touch upon it here in a new light. But if you want to go through any of the other recordings, these are called the three Mahagunas. So we look through the lens, Ayurvedic lens or the Vedic lens of the three Mahagunas. And the three Mahagunas mean, Maha means great and gunas mean qualities. The three great qualities that have manifested everything as we know it in life. But our psychology is dominated by these three qualities, and the different parts of us end up acting and in these three different ways primarily. So the first one is sattva, 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 or also pronounced sattva, like water at the end, wa, sattva, sattva. And these are, sat means truth, and tva means close to, or approaching, or near to the truth. So these sattvic or sattva aspects, so sattva is like, it's almost like the truth. So sattva and sattvic parts of us are the parts of us that are most um, most like the divine, most gentle, compassionate, curious, clear. We can use all those different C words: clear, compassionate, curious, caring. So sattvic parts of us are also these very like sweet, simple, magical parts of us. These are the parts of us that are imaginatory, that are very innocent and pure. These are the parts of us that are tapped into wisdom and that are most like our divine self or our true self. Our true self is not necessarily a sattvic part because our true self is not a part, but the sattvic parts of us are most like our true self, and they help us access our true self. So when we live in ways that are in alignment with the rhythms of nature, and we're eating and sleeping in regular cycles, and we are following some of the principles of Ayurveda that help our nervous systems feel calm and safe, then we are living in a sattvic way. Just like with, if you think of any child, most children thrive when they're fed and slept. Right? We start feeling really stressed out when we go too long without eating, or if we go multiple days without sleeping well, and there's like lots of demands on us. So think sattvic is very simple lifestyle, and it's making sure I'm slept, making sure I'm nourished, making sure my basic needs are being met in a very simple way. And this creates, safety in the nervous system and allows you to approach more sattva or feel more resourced to connect with the sattvic parts of you and with your true self. And then we also have parts that are rajasic. So this is the second kind of category. Now the inner parts are become very activated, and rajas is a word, a term in Sanskrit that refers to energy in movement. And it, when it's in an extreme sense of rajas, it can be a lot of agitation. But sometimes agitation is necessary to move something that has inertia. But rajas is an excitability, it's an agitation, it's energy and movement. And so the way that manifests in our psychology or within these parts is that the protector parts are actively trying to keep your busy mind, your mind busy and agitated and focused and goal oriented. So rajas is very goal oriented, and these rajasic parts are usually working very hard with this energy to try to keep you from feeling too much of what's in the third realm. And this third realm is called tamas. And tamas is refers to, so rajas, if you're taking notes, it's rajas. And then tamas is tamas, tamas. So tamas is referring to the parts of us that are buried and completely unknown to us. So these are those exiled parts that are really, really buried under the surface, that are our blind spot. Some people might call our blind spot some aspect of yourself that you've never met. They're still just hidden in the darkness. There could be an aspect of your inner child that you've met, but there could be a frozen part of your inner child in some memory that was traumatic that has been buried completely. And then the Rajasic protector part is doing everything in its power to keep you busy and engaged with something else so that that hurt part stays buried in tamas, so that that hurt part stays um, unknown to you. And the fear that the rajas part has, because rajas is excitability, it's agitation, it's anxiety, and it's fear, the fear that the rajasic part has is that if the hidden tamasic part of you becomes known, the emotion might be so overwhelming that it just completely takes over. And that fear and of that becomes so unbearable that it does everything it can to just keep it buried, keep it buried, keep it buried. But what happens is that it's impossible for it to keep it buried forever. So that tamasic part and that rajasic aspect will intersect into your physical body, into the emotional body, and just it'll slowly start to come to the surface because it's just another form of ama. So in Ayurveda, we call undigested food materials become ama in the body. If you can't digest your food, it becomes a substance that is no longer nourishing you. It just clogs the channels, it gets stuck. You know, some people call these toxicity that builds up in the system. But just simply put, this ama becomes mental ama. Undigested experiences from the past, or undigested, or just all this unknown information or these unknown aspects of self become buried. And what happens is it clogs the physiology, it clogs the subtle channels first. We have, Ayurveda says we have 72,000 nadis, which are kind of like the Chinese meridians. They're the very subtle energy pathways that go through the body. So if you've ever gotten acupuncture, you put a needle in one place to help open the pathway of this whole line of subtle energy. And so these 72,000 nadis are a flow of communication throughout your whole system. And when there's undigested material, when there's undigested experiences, undigested emotions, repressed emotional experiences, repressed memories that are painful, they crystallize into this mental, emotional, energetic ama, and they clog the nadi channels. And so just like if you ever watered your lawn with the gardening hose and you're pulling it through, and all of a sudden it gets caught on something and it gets a kink, and that kink, the water shuts off. So in the same way, in your subtle energy channels, these energy channels get blocked with this energetic ama, these undigested experiences. It crystallizes in the tissues. The muscles become tight and achy. The organs become less effective. The Agni is your digestive fire, your metabolism, and the cellular intelligence inside of every cell becomes that fire that needs to burn brightly, that needs to metabolize food and nutrients into energy, to build new tissues, to give you clear vision and life. That Agni fire starts getting depleted and depleted and depleted and depleted because it gets clogged by by this subtle ama, this subtle toxicity. And what happens is when it actually in your gut, in your digestive system, when that flame gets smaller and smaller and smaller, it depletes even your ability to digest physical food. So then the physical food becomes toxic in the system. It becomes undigested food, and then the bowels get clogged up, and then you feel sluggish and tired, and then you end up not eating enough nutrients, or you're eating nutrients but they're not getting to where they need to go. So then you start craving foods and heavier foods because you're actually so nutrient depleted. So now you start reaching for all these foods and you're like, oh, I've been vegetarian for years, but it must not be working for me. So I need to eat meat. Or because it's a denser and denser, you start craving denser and denser and denser food, but you can't digest it. So then the digestive capacity gets worse and worse and worse. But it's all just because the mental emotional ama clogged the subtle channels, and then it depleted the fire, and your cells got deprived of nutrients, so they start craving all these foods because they're desperate, but now you can't digest anything. And then what happens? IBS develops because your system gets clogged up, for example, and then your stomach starts cramping or liquefying everything because it's like nothing's working, evacuate, evacuate, and all the red lights start going off in the inner physiology, and it liquefies everything, and then it depletes everything, and it's like, okay, at least we're empty of all this backup sludge. But now everything's dried out because we liquefied everything, and now we're dehydrated, and then the whole cycle happens again. And that's one way it manifests. But what else happens? Like, maybe you don't feel it if you're not a sensitive vata constitution. You might go years and not really have any problem because you just have such a strong, robust appetite and diet. And instead, maybe a long standing, like a Kaphic person, all of that ama ends up going into the heart, the arteries of the heart instead, and it clogs everything there. And then slowly heart disease forms. And because everywhere needs to deposit one of the tissues, it will be deposited, and it'll be deposited based on your bodily constitutional tendencies. But this kind of segues into, there are 6 stages. I did say that we would talk about this today. So I'll list out the stages very briefly, but I kind of just went through them. So the first stage is called accumulation. So we said this ama accumulates in the body or in the tissues or in the subtle energy channel. So that's stage 1, accumulation. Stage 2, sanchaya prakopa, is called prakopa, which is the provocation stage. So if you imagine like your toilet or sink accumulating water because the drain is clogged, and it accumulates in stage 1. Stage 2, the provocation stage, means it starts to spill over. Ew, gross, like toilet bowl backed up and now it's spilling all over the floor. So that's stage 2, provocation. So it gets provoked right over the edge, it spills over. So now in stage 3, sanchaya prakopa prasara, it starts spreading because the backup didn't happen in your kitchen sink or in your bathroom. It actually happened in your body. So now, because everything gets backed up and it gets provoked, accumulated and provoked, it spills over into the bloodstream or into the subtle energy circulation channels. And so now in stage 3, it starts spreading. And because the backing up continues and continues and continues day in and day out, digestion is depleted. You're still eating every day because you're trying to maintain your blood sugar so that you can function, but things are still getting more and more and more sluggish on the inner channels. And this ama is spreading throughout the system. And really, because it continues to back up, it's looking for a place to deposit. It's looking for a home. So in stage 4, this is the deposition stage, and it's going to deposit in one or more of the 7 bodily tissues. So it's going to deposit either in your plasma, white blood cell, aspect of your body or in the red blood cells or in some type of muscle tissue, whether it's your organs or in your actual muscle tissue, creating that stiffness. And it's going to deposit somewhere, or it's going to deposit into the joint tissues, creating stiff, um, cracky, poppy joints that get painful to move and create arthritis or rheumatoid arthritis, or into the muscle tissue of even the arterial um, complexes in the heart or in the bodily other organ systems. So it might get stuck, lodged into the fat tissue, and then that person ends up gaining weight, fat on the viscera, which then affects the abilities of the organs. It might get lodged into the nervous system tissue, and it could eat away at the myelin sheath in the process, or it could create more sluggishness in the nerve transmission. And so everything just, it ends up having a really challenging time in the nervous system, more anxiety or more hypersensitivity, or it can get lodged into the deposit in the reproductive organs. So, and create various problems, endometriosis, fibroids, and painful periods, inability to conceive a child, all different kinds of things, premature ejaculation for men, or various other issues. And or in the endocrine system as well. So in this stage 4, it can, this everything that gets backed up in that ama can end up crystallizing and then deposits in stage 4. So then once it deposits into one of those tissues, it takes, as time goes on, stage 5 and 6, which is typically the stages that Western medicine can actually have diagnostic tools that are sensitive enough to start to figure out what's going on in someone's body. And that's in stage 5 and 6, which are the manifestation stage. So stage 5 is manifestation, and then stage 6 is differentiation. And really what those two mean is that in stage 4, this ama deposits. In stage 5, it actually manifests a full-blown disease there. And then in stage 6, the differentiation stage means the tissue itself differentiates from the normal healthy tissue that it used to look like. And that becomes the stage that's the hardest to reverse, because you have to totally rebuild new tissue in some way, or that tissue needs to be completely eradicated out of the system in some way, and then new tissue has to be replaced in its place. For example, cancerous cells go from manifestation into differentiation, where the cells are completely cancerous cells. They're no longer your healthy human cells. They function with a totally different identity. So that's the difference between stage 5 and 6. So this is called Ayurvedic Samprapti. And these 6 stages are just a basic overview of how physical dis-ease manifests in the body. But we also started to explore how the energetic and emotional aspect relates that, and how those clog the subtle channels as well. And so in stage 4, that deposition stage is also very much how the energetics and the physical like meet. Because if you have these different parts of you that have been long-standing repressed, aspects of you, or that had some kind of traumatic imprint or painful imprint on it, and they got buried, and then these protective parts developed in order to prevent that vulnerable part from ever getting hurt again. But that vulnerable part has all these emotions that have built up inside of it. And so the emotions of that part are what get lodged in the tissues. And the emotions of that, or those parts, the burden on those parts for holding these things all these years, is also what compromises the various organs and physical tissues and the seven dhatus, the seven tissues. So there might be a genetic predisposition as to why one tissue gets, you know, compromised over another, or it might be environmental, why one tissue gets compromised over, or a certain organ. So if someone was like a smoker for many years and then they quit, but they have now some compromised lung tissue, and then this process goes on. Or it maybe not even smokers, that would be a physical or an environmental. If they work in an environment that they were inhaling toxic fumes, this could make the tissues of the organs, become compromised. So then by the time stage 4 hits, that's the weakened link in the chain. And that's where, the ama ends up accumulating and depositing, because the other tissues are really robust and strong. And now this one gets compromised. Or the lungs could be unresolved grief from this repressed part that was hurt. So unresolved grief tends to have an affinity to the lungs and the heart. Unresolved anger tends to have an affinity to the liver, liver and gallbladder. Unresolved fear tends to go to the adrenals and kidneys. But these maps aren't perfect, and they're not across the board for everyone. So I don't even like going into that. Like, Dr. Ladd, my teacher, will, unpack that and talk about the affinity of various emotions into different organs. But we also find, and he also says, it's so much more complex than that, because even with some people, there's just these unexplained pain symptoms in various places, or ongoing, stage 3, which is just irritable, or bowel tendencies that tend to just liquefy when they feel stressed, or they tend to get constipated when stressed. And so that creates a lot of discomfort. But lucky for those people who have the digestive discomfort, because they actually catch the patterns earlier and can resolve these things, because stage 1, 2, and 3 all has to do with the subtle energy and the digestive energy, digestive capacity. And then, of course, if it goes unhealed over time, the digestive system can still go to stage 4, 5, and 6, like in the cases of Crohn's disease, or, various other pathologies of the digestive system. But if you're understanding or starting to get introduced to this concept, you have it now in your power to be able to check on the subtle energy pathways of the first 3 stages. When you start to feel an emotion, when you start to feel triggered by something that happened around you, whether it was a story or your partner or a friend or someone you encounter in the world, and you feel emotionally triggered, instead of making that part of you wrong, or telling it to shut up, or telling it to be quiet, or just being frustrated and annoyed with that part of you, instead you can be like, oh, I hear you, I feel you, I'm sorry you're feeling that. And you can self-care, and you can listen to that part, and you can, yep, Sue says, embrace your triggers with love. You can be loving towards that part. You can be curious towards that part. Like, what are you feeling and why? You can see how that energy moves in your body, how it wants to move. And instead of identifying with it, oh, this thing is happening again, we could see, oh, yeah, how can I just embrace and accept this discomfort? How can I lean into it? Dr. Ladd had a beautiful visualization that I used for many, many years. And it's actually the single practice that that has spawned itself into, or bloomed itself into, all of these other applications that I weave into the therapeutic counseling that I do now. And this single practice has actually nothing to do with parts. I think, quite frankly, Dr. Lattis was like, we don't even need to do all that, any kind of psychological analysis or anything. All you need to do is this one practice, and it will heal everything. And it did. But I also found that us Westerners need a little bit more specificity on other layers. And it's profoundly transformational when we do parts work in combination with Ayurveda, just so profoundly transformational. So I'll give you the one practice so you can use it anytime. But this one practice is just the flower. I'll call it the flower. That's how I've always visualized it. But any emotion that becomes ripe and comes to the surface, you just let it bloom like a flower. So just like if you've ever watched flowers in a vase at home or in your garden, what's the cycle that every single plant goes through? It becomes born, it grows, it flowers into fruition, comes into full bloom, and then what happens? It withers and it dies. It goes back to the earth. So it's birthed, it grows, it blooms in its fullness, and then it wilts. And so just like that, with every ripe emotion that comes to the surface, whether it be fear, anxiety, anger, terror, rage, grief, sadness, when it comes to the surface, don't push that seed, bury it back into the earth. It will never bloom again. It needs to be close to the surface. Encourage it. Just be with it. You don't even have to encourage it, actually. Just be with it. Just watch it. Just like you watch the little seeds in your garden. If it's ripe and it's coming to the surface, it's there. It's a gift to you. It's wanting, it's energy that's wanting to move. Let it be born and just sit and watch it. And you can sit and watch it and witness it as it grows and it blooms to its full intensity. And it might be very uncomfortable. And it might get so intense in a moment that you think you can't handle it. But just trust that whatever has become ripe is just enough for you to handle. And it won't be more. And you can actually even talk to those inner parts of you and say, we're only going to work with as much as we can handle. It makes you better to just say that. But just realize whatever comes to the surface that's ripe will be just enough that you can process in that moment. And then it might get really intense to the point of where you're very uncomfortable, but you just continue to watch it. It goes into its fullest expression, and then it wilts. And then on the other side of that, you're continuing to witness. And sometimes it comes in waves, and there might be another wave that comes. Sometimes they're like waves of the ocean, but you can just see each one as like it comes to its fullness, it peaks, and then it wilts again. It ripens, it grows, it peaks, and it wilts. It ripens, it grows, it peaks, and it wilts. And every one of your emotions will go through this process, and it will be more than enough. You just doing that is more than enough. It's like every season that we go through in life. If we become the gardeners, the great gardeners of our health, great gardeners of our daily routine so that we're nourishing ourselves, putting ourselves to sleep, being mindful of our sensory inputs and our energy outputs, not over giving, not overindulging, but just living in these rhythms that are most supportive for us. Then nature just allows the healing to unfold. So that's one insight there. Yeah, Sue says it's like the moon. It becomes full and then it wanes, cycles. Absolutely. And Mehar says one tends to get swept up in strong emotions. Does one try to be an observer? Yep. So that's the perfect segue, Mehar, back into the parts. So what often happens, and this is where the parts work becomes really, really helpful to create space between you and the parts. So you want to do everything you can through your spiritual practice regularly, through meditation, like japa or mantra meditation, repetition, whatever your practices are, and the unique way that you connect with the divine. You want to cultivate that first and foremost. And that just strengthens, especially if you do it first thing in the morning when you wake up, do something, anything to connect with the seat of your true self. And, setting that intention to see the lens of through your true self. And then the parts. So when the part experiences an intense emotion, you in moments will become the part. And so it's okay to become the part, to emote, to speak and express and release as the part, as long as some part of your consciousness realizes that that's not really you. So no matter what wave takes over, emotion takes over, you can feel it so fully. And for that part, it is real and it feels so real, and it might be really intense in that moment. But if you can hold a simultaneous awareness in some little speck corner of your consciousness and be like self-soothing, soothing that part of you and being like, it's okay, you can let it out, whatever you need to say, whatever you need to do. And it just allows you to recognize that you're not the part, because there's some part of you that is holding you through that process. Or if you feel like you could do it that way, you could do it as if you are holding the part, or you can be the part and allow the part to be held by God, by the divine, by an angel, by whatever divine aspect is unique to you and your spiritual path. Because the true you is a divine part. It's the part that's inseparable from God. It's the eternal you. So sometimes when you're in the part and you're emoting as the part and you're fully in that place, you can just allow the part to be held. You can still have the awareness that this is a part of me that's going through this experience and I'm holding it. But in that, you still are the observer. It's a really beautiful question. Yeah, you still are the observer. And yeah, being the observer or the witness doesn't look like you're just perfectly poised and calm. Like it looks like you might be shape-shifting from one part of you to the other, and that's totally normal and okay. It's just most people are blended with their parts, and different parts. It's like a multiple personality thing where different parts just step in and they have no awareness that it's happening, and they're acting from that part, they're speaking from that part, they're interacting with others, they're thinking. And it's completely, their identity is just with that part, and it tends to drive us crazy when we're fully blended with parts. So what's really helpful, both from a spiritual perspective as well as like a full body, like energetic perspective, from just what the parts really need, is your true self. Because every organism, inner organism, if we're equating it to an inner kingdom, what does every inner kingdom need, or inner community need, or family unit need? In inner family unit, it needs it needs a leader. Otherwise, everything just is trying to figure it out and everyone just takes the lead. So the leader of your self is yourself. The leader of your inner kingdom is your true self. And so you want to establish that first and foremost, and then deepen that. And then the more you engage with the different parts, it becomes a relationship between you, the true self, and the different parts. And then you reconcile and heal the different parts through that relationship. And there was one other thing I was going to say there that I'm missing. But yeah, does that make sense and answer your question? There was something else I was going to say. I almost think, anyway, it'll come back. It's so wonderful to see all of you here. I just noticed Zabi popped her video on, and Rhonda and Claudia. Thank you. I mean, Claudia, you were here already. But everyone that's also not on video, I just want to acknowledge all of you for showing up today. I'm so, so, so happy to see all of you. Kaylee, haven't seen you in a while. So nice to see you. Okay, so let's dive in to, let me check my notes, make sure I'm hitting all the points that I promised you. And we will do a practice too. I promised you we'd do a little journal practice. So we'll do that here as we're wrapping up. We'll probably go another 15 or 20 minutes together. And then definitely we can go over if you guys have questions too. I'm more than happy to answer any questions, and I'll look at the chat again at the end. Great. So yeah, as your questions come up for you, feel free to just write them in, and even if I don't see them right away. Kaylee sings Om Purnam a lot. Om Purnamidam. We did that in one of our workshops. It's recorded on my YouTube channel if any of you want to watch it. We did mantra meditations that are really supportive for connecting more with true self. So establishing the seat of true self. And then it's also really helpful because you can sing those mantras to the parts. So one of the premises here, so we kind of looked at it through a little bit of an Ayurvedic lens. We talked about the sattvic parts, which help you get closer to your true self and that are supportive of your overall inner kingdom. And then we talked about the rajasic and tamasic parts, and these parts of you that end up being protectors in some way to the vulnerable parts that have been hurt. And those are the tamasic parts that have been really buried, that are unknown to you. Honestly, there's a lot of overlap here in the Rajas and Tamas realm. Basically, all of the parts end up having a little bit of Rajas and Tamas, but more so the Tamas is the aspects that are really buried, that are completely unmet. And then the Rajas parts are the parts that are very actively trying to keep you distracted. And we can go into much more detail in that realm. But for today, I want to just give you a little bit of a journaling exercise that you can start to connect with your parts. And the main thing to think about is that, oh, here's what I was going to say before that I thought I forgot, is basically that the healer, just say the healer of all the parts of you is your true self, the true self that is eternally connected, fully immersed in the unchanging aspect, the true aspect of divinity of God. So God, also the aspect of God that is your soul or your true self, your eternal spirit, is the healer of the parts. So the most important first step that you can take is to establish a good relationship, a relationship with the true self, in the seat of the true self, and then to start to welcome all of your parts home. And it's so easy to get, especially with self-deprecating parts or parts that get agitated or frustrated, it's easy to get annoyed with those parts of ourselves, or even fearful parts of ourselves. Like, we want to just be like, no, I don't have any fear, I am brave. And then we were like, our thoughts are most important, and so I'm going to affirm, I am brave, I am courageous, I am this, I am that. But that part is going, no, I'm not. No, I'm not. No, I'm not that. What are you saying? And then like, and then that creates inner conflict. And this is why over the long term, just like simple affirmations without creating relationship with these different parts, it doesn't work. Because of course the antidote to the part who feels afraid wants to feel that I am trusting, I am surrendered to divine will, I am confident, and it wants to feel that, but it can't feel that way as a denial of what it is feeling right now and what it has been feeling for years or decades of its existence. Because to invoke an I am statement is to push that part further and further away from you, and it's trying to find its way home. So we can't just deny that we have all these parts. We can't just pretend that they don't exist. We can't just bury them with positive thinking. It's not honoring, and it's completely unnatural, and it's completely like unrealistic to think that our human selves can just be black and white, one thing or the other, positive all the time. Like, it's just not reality. And so if we have that as our goal, it, it's we're setting ourselves up for frustration and failure right off the bat. And so all parts are looking for a way home. And so what we want to do first is to welcome them home, to send the message out there to them that they are welcome here, that you're going to do your very best to make them feel safe, and to have them feel welcomed, and for them to feel like they can introduce themselves to you if you haven't met each other yet. Right? So this first exercise in your journal, and you don't have to, you can continue after our time together here. We'll just introduce the prompt. But the idea here is just sending a message out to your parts that all parts are welcome. All parts are welcome. So open up just to a blank page, get your pen ready, but just place it down on the page. And then just take a moment to close your eyes and take a few deep breaths, just like we did in the beginning of class. And just connecting with your heart, with the love inside of your heart, and maybe the love that you feel towards all the beautiful, sweet beings in your life that you feel a lot of affection towards. So think about the animals, the children, your loved ones, just only the aspects that you feel really loving towards. And then with that connection to love in your heart, just imagine that you're sending like a wave of sonar, like a beam of love from your heart out to all the parts of your inner world. You're sending it out to the far corners, known or unknown to you, the far corners of your psyche, of your subconscious, all the dark caves and dark corners of your inner world that you have yet to unearth or reveal, and just sending love. You can imagine yourself doing that in a number of ways. You can imagine that there's a color beaming out to them all, or a wave of beautiful sound that reaches every corner. But make sure you imagine it reaches all to the front of you, to the sides, to the back, top and bottom, or you can visualize it as a vast naturescape. And with that love beam, send out the invitation that all of you are welcome here. All of you are welcome here. This is your home. All of you are welcome here. And then just let them know that you want to help. So just send out that intention to everyone in the inner world. I want to help any of you that are in need. But to do that, I need to know you. I need to know all of you. So just send out that heartfelt request. I want to help any of you that are in need. But to do that, I need to know you. I need to meet you. And as you send that out, you also just want to let them know that I want to meet you, but I request that you not overwhelm me or take over me, because that's the way that we will establish healthy relationship. So you're welcome here, but if you overwhelm or take over me, then I can't actually help you. So just request, please reveal yourself to me. Be here with me. Just be here with me. And when you're ready, let me know who you are. This is an open invitation. When you're ready, let me know who you are. And I welcome you home. And then from that place, keeping your eyes almost closed, turned downward, you can pick up your pen and just start to write whatever comes into your awareness. Any thoughts, feelings, or sensations, any parts that you hear or see or sense, anything that comes as you send that out. And just take a couple of minutes to write. Wrapping up your writing. Beautiful. And you can continue welcoming home your parts after we wrap up here, or any as often as you'd like, just tuning in with them. This is a beautiful first step. And we'll answer some questions and then do a little closing prayer. And I see, and then we'll sign off for today. Sherry, I see your hand up. Hi, Sherry. Did you have a question?
I do. Oh my God, Alicia, that was just so beautiful. I mean, it was so articulated in such a just a perfect way to really be able to really get it and really feel what you're saying. And this is why you're a teacher. I mean, I'm just like blown away of the experience I had in just this one little webinar. Um, but my question to you was, are we going to be able to get this as a recording to be able to listen to it again?
Yeah, absolutely. I will send out the
Okay,
recording.
because I
Yep.
love the meditation and the visualization, and you could just really feel what you're saying.
Good. Yep, absolutely. Recording will be provided. Thank you
Okay,
for that feedback. That means so much.
thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or shares? If there's anything that anyone wants to share from the journaling exercise, you don't have to share, but open to your any reflections or shares or feedback or requests of how I can serve you better in the future. Neha, were you trying to unmute? Or are you just moving your camera? Okay. Marianne says, very good journaling exercise. Awesome. Glad that was helpful for you. Yes, Sue. Fear needs to be acknowledged, honored, comforted, and embraced, not dismissed, disregarded, and rejected. Yep. The Pixar movie Inside Out is a great journey of the emotions. Yeah, what a beautiful example of some of the inner voices, that movie. Oh, Kaylee asked, if one has a lot of autoimmune disorders, what emotions are those? So in autoimmune, from an energetic perspective in Ayurveda, it looks at the self is attacking the self. So the self doesn't recognize itself. The cells don't recognize itself. And so the immune system turns on itself and starts to attack healthy tissues. And so energetically, there could be various roots for that. But it seems that there's usually a lot tied into at some point, some part got so hurt, and maybe there was like violence or abuse or neglect, some way that that part felt really unloved, and that ends up internalizing as self-hatred or self-deprecation in some way, self-annihilation in some way. And I know some of these are big words, and it's hard for us to sometimes agree or identify with those words, but there usually is some kind of buried part that feels like it wishes it didn't exist, or that it has self rage that wants to be turned outward, but instead, even out of kindness, it doesn't want to turn it outward, so it turns it inward. So unresolved anger or rage or hurt ends up getting turned upon the self. And then the other Another kind of energetic aspect to autoimmune can be lack of self-identity. So the person doesn't know how to actually connect with self. And so there's no disconnect or boundary between self and other. And so that dynamic ends up, the immune system again turns on itself and starts to attack healthy tissue. But usually there's some piece of like there's like some part that usually has like some kind of internalized anger, rage, or the anger or rage could be injustice that was created towards a part or towards a person or towards a child that was undigested, unreconciled, and so over years turns into a attack on the self. And then the other thing that happens like physiologically connected to that emotional state is that the agnis get out of balance in the body, and so the internal agni gets dispersed. So the internal agni that's supposed to be in the digestive system gets depleted there, but it gets increased elsewhere. So that heat starts burning up some of the tissues and creating that. And what happens is there's a physical ama that ends up clogging the system. And when the physical ama clogs the system, it's like if you can imagine your cell getting coded. So like every cell has an identifier so that the body recognizes, oh, you are a part of me. We're on the same team. But when the cell gets coded with ama, which Dr. Ladd defines as toxic, morbid, metabolic waste, and the whole system is not able to purify itself, cleanse itself as readily as it needs to, and it all builds up in the system, and then the cells get covered with this toxic, morbid, metabolic waste. And so the immune system doesn't recognize it anymore, and so it attacks it. And so that can happen in a number of different tissues based on the 6 stages we talked about earlier, differentiating which tissue and why. And then that can manifest or differentiate into various different autoimmune disorders. Great question. Thank you. And Kaylee, glad you're singing Hari Om. Sue, the source of the reading from the beginning of class is called the Radiant Sutras by Lauren Roche. And the poem that I actually read from was Radiant Sutra number 26, page 61. Enter the bowl of vastness, that is the heart. That's my favorite line. And yeah, I see other comments that were made throughout class. Thank you all for your engagement. It's always so wonderful to get your feedback. You're welcome, Kaylee. Nehar says the journaling was freeing. Really enjoyed the whole call. Thanks for sharing. Thank you. Thank you. All right. If there are no other questions for today, it sounds like, thank you all for your engagement. It sounds like we've got maybe all the questions answered for today. If there's anything else, raise your hand or write it in the chat. I'm seeing mostly thank yous, so that's probably a good indicator that we're complete for today. Yeah, I look forward to getting more on a regular schedule with all of this, with all of these workshops again. Not totally sure what that's going to look like. I'm questioning the structures. Like, I don't know, I was attached to every Wednesday. We were doing Wednesdays and then every other Wednesday. I don't know if that's the best. I was also thinking it might be really valuable. A lot of really well-intentioned and loving women seem to be drawn to these calls, and at no exclusion to the few beautiful men that also join these calls. But I was thinking of doing some virtual like women's circles, like over some weekends, maybe once every month or two, and like just actually coming into a container where we can, I see some, thank you, Sherry, some thumbs up. So where we can actually come into a container like this and do more sharing, more like journaling practices, self-reflection, a little more singing, and we would make those available on a donation style basis so that they're accessible to everyone. But it just feels really nice to come together as women, and we could go into some of the deeper emotional realms with also what comes up with women's health, because my one-on-one practice has specialized more in women's health and healing. So I think there'd be a lot that we could all dive into discussing on that. So yeah, I'm reflecting on some things in my own meditation. Please write to me anytime via email, hello@alicialyndiaz.com. If you have any, promptings or questions or specific topics that you would be prompted from these workshops that you would like to dive in deeper. So please always write to me anytime. Again, hello@alicialyndiaz.com is the email. And most of you are already on the mailing list just for this group specifically. For those of you who might be watching this recording who are not on it and you want to get notifications of the workshops that are going live, you can go to alicialyndiaz.com, and then there's a button that says workshops. It's like trauma healing workshops or something, and you can just register for these classes there. And Denise says, this was so wonderful, Alicia. Everything was so clearly presented and such helpful reminders, really helpful journaling exercise. Yes. Okay, great. I love seeing the encouragement for these circles. I feel like it's really a good time, especially going into the seasons of change, whether it's fall or spring, depending on where you are, but it's a season of transition. So it's really good to gather and to do some self-reflection, transitioning into a new season. Sue says, best wishes on your new home. So glad you chose kapha to pacify your vata producing activity. Yes, thank you for that. Sherry's in boundaries. So it sounds like boundaries are a topic that you want to dive into deeper. Is that what you mean? Oh, thank you, Marianne. Thank you, Kaylee and Arsha. Yes. Okay. Great. Sherry, could you expand on that with the boundaries? Just what specifically around boundaries have been challenging for you? I'm writing, Rhonda asked for my email in the chat. I'm writing it right now for you. Okay. Sherry, can I unmute you real quick? Where'd you go?
I'm here.
Tell me more about boundaries, because it's a very big topic. So tell me more about
so boundaries on family, relationships, leadership, really like what's that line? Where's that line at? Like, where can we I mean, what you did today just like opened me up. So like, I'm just thinking. So, and I've been like asking and asking in my meditation. I'm like, I need a sister circle group. But I need the right leader for me and the right medicine for me. So I think I found it.
Oh,
I'm feeling like I've been needing this, and I'm so glad that you're just going to take it on and get us women back on track, because it's been a lot that's been happening.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. Okay, I just realized my voice echoes when you're unmuted. So okay, thank you. That's much more clear, and so much we could talk about on boundaries and all of those things. And Yep. And sister circle. So I think then maybe the next move is just I'll look at some dates that we could do that over a couple of days and get to go deeper into some of these things and really hold that space for more sharing. I think that's so valuable when we can hear each other's inner experience, and bring that into the circle and intentions and all of that. So really beautiful. Thank you all for your feedback on that. Marianne says, I think expanding on what you were saying today, because I've been consciously pushing my negative feelings down versus acknowledging them, trying to be more positive and talking to myself positively. Yeah, Marianne. So yeah, it's like maybe rather than orienting towards black or white, good, bad, positive, and negative, it's more just about acceptance, accepting the reality of what arises. The parts, like they can coexist. I can have parts of me that feel hopeful and positive. I can have parts of me that are going through something challenging. And then you can deliberately ask different parts to take a step back and some parts to just be really present with. So it's just like if you're sitting in a room with multiple people that are relating to one another, like a family unit, um, and you're like everyone's trying to talk over each other. It's like, okay, let us all be here together, but this one's really loud and taking over. So it's like, okay, would you mind? We would love to hear you, but would you mind just taking a back seat for a moment so that this child who's crying or having a hard time can be heard or seen or whatever. And then you bring your full presence to that child and that child starts to feel safe. So just as an example. So consider that whenever you have starting to bring your awareness to these different parts between now and when we meet next, bring your awareness to these different parts and bring your presence and allow presence for each of them. And again, just with that mood of you're all welcome here. All parts are welcome here. Sherry said she could do like a 12-week sister circle. Cool. That's really cool. Yeah, I will meditate and reflect on all. Denise says talking about reversing things once they've reached the manifestation or differentiation stage, meaning that's a topic you'd be interested in. Yeah. Okay. Cool. Noting everything down. Thank you. I love hearing feedback from all of you on what you're interested in. And Marianne is interested in that too. Okay, great. And yes, journaling always helps. So Marianne, another practice you can do is sometimes when we're just sitting alone with all of the things, it's hard. Like it's easier when you have someone facilitating it for you. You know, it's easier to discern. But journaling, if you are by yourself, you can do it. Journaling and just take, okay, I'm going to give you my full presence now. And then you write, who are you? Like, who is the part? How old is this part? How do I feel towards this part? And this is obviously what we would do in other sessions, but these are just some of the things you can journal, or you can just free write. I'm just writing these prompts in your journal. I mean, in the chat. So so those might be a couple prompts, or just free writing where you put your pen to the paper and you're like, wow, this part is really present. I'm going to give you space. And then we want to start differentiating parts, because you never go after the buried parts, because protectors are in place to protect them. And the protectors will get really flared up if you try to just go after, the part that they've been protecting. So what we really want to do is first create relationship with any parts that are just ripe, that are just willingly allowing themselves to be connected to you. So don't try to go in and try to find anybody. You're just saying all of you are welcome here, even the parts that I can't see. And then you're just creating a welcoming environment and space for some of them to come in as they feel safe and ready to connect with you. Because some parts may have been, may need to rebuild trust with you if you've been denying them for a long time, but they're still willing. So you just need to, over time, like, continue connecting with them. So that journaling practice is a really great one. So thank you, Marianne, for bringing that up. And Sue, I'm guessing this is Carolina, I'm glad the journaling's been helpful for you too. And then Sue said the 6 stages can apply to getting well too. Yep, I'm assuming that's just in response to the other conversation. And then Carolina said, thank you, Alicia. It was wonderful to participate today. I've missed you. I've missed you too, love. I'm so happy to have you here. Okay, great. Great. Okay, dears, I think we did it. Thank you for a wonderfully engaged and present workshop time together. All of you were so beautifully engaged and participatory. I really appreciate that so much. And I will be in touch via email. And Sue, that was a topic. Okay, 6 stages. Great. Thank you for that. And yeah, we'll find some times and a format or structure that might work for us, sister circle type gathering where we can go deeper into some of this work. That sounds really beautiful. And we'll also continue doing some open workshops for everyone to join. So no worries, don't worry, guys. We won't leave you out. We'll keep doing these. And yeah, just lots of love to you all. Have a beautiful rest of your day, evening, night, whenever you're watching this. And let's just do a little closing prayer. Loka samasta sukhino bhavantu. Just sending out the love and blessings for all beings to connect with the divine and the purity and goodness inside their hearts. Deep breath in and exhale out. Deep breath in, and we'll chant 3 times. Loka samasta sukhino bhavantu. Loka samasta sukhino bhavantu. Loka samasta sukhino bhavantu. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Namaste, Claudia. Namaste, all. See you next time. Thank you so much.